Man, Maranatha, Detroit, Michigan, where everything depends upon a proper understanding of Genesis 3:15, where the Most High God said to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman. Her seed's heel will bruise your seed's skull. Can you test the spirit? Are you able to test a spirit? See, the spirit is, a spirit can really be like the exorcist. I mean, it could be really detrimental to one's health. Are you able to test the spirit? Then test this. In Genesis 3:15, where the Most High God said to the serpent, your seed's skull. Seed was a child. And if a child came into this world, a child had a skull, a head. Jesus, being the seed of the woman, he had a foot. His literal foot, when he was on the cross, on the tree, was over a literal physical skull. Whose skull was it? See, you can't use fact over myth. I mean, you could, but that's not the Hebraic understanding of the text. See, the Hebraic understanding of the text, it had an oral tradition. See, if you've been listening to the Gentiles and you know that the Torah was given to the Israelites and not any other nation, but yet you're listening to Gentiles teach the book. Well, if you want the truth of the matter, you got to test the spirit. When the Gentiles say that Isaiah 7:14 is the foundation of Matthew 1:18, and Matthew was drawing from the immaculate conception idea, this virgin birth, a woman not having sex but yet producing a child, trying to fulfill their understanding of Genesis 3:15. Because in Genesis 3:15, I mean, if the Most High God knows how the body is made, he knows that a woman doesn't give seed, a woman gives egg. So if they know that his word doesn't come back void, they know that this woman is pregnant, but it doesn't tell you the father. See, it ought to produce a question in you. If God has made all types of flesh to unite with its own kind, Adam did not have a wife. When he went amongst the beasts of the field, he wasn't dealing in bestiality like trying to have sex with a lamb or a zebra or a goat. The Gentile nations were known as animals according to God. So when he's looking for a mate, and it says he went amongst the beasts of the field, he's not looking for an animal. This is why he has to come to God and say, I need a woman, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. I need someone who I can procreate with. I need someone who has my flesh. And God understood. And God gave him a wife. And they had physical children. That's the story of this creation and how we got to be where we are today. But when you are asked the question, who's the seed of the serpent? No one knows. People come up with this Anunnaki and the reptilians, or people looking like he's a dragon or even a literal snake, or no, it just means Nakash, a shining one, a Sasquatch. People come up with all of these false narratives that Timothy speaks of, these fanciful genealogies to produce a understanding of who Christ was. And as they follow these false narratives, again, if they're willing to test the spirit, they may see that what they are believing is wrong. Because if you produce a teaching that is not true, it is not a correct depiction of the truth, then you are a false witness. You are a false teacher. If you're going around saying that Jesus, the Messiah, the fulfiller of Genesis 3:15, did not have a physical father, a historical father, then you're producing a false narrative. Luke 3:23 tells you that Jesus, the Messiah, his natural father was Joseph. When the translator translated the text into English, they put parentheses. Parentheses weren't invented in the during the time of the Greek language. It was an emphasis to the writer, as a little footnote to say, hey, remember, if you really want the understanding of this book in Genesis 3:15, then you ought to understand that the physical father was Joseph. The writer of Matthew, the author of Matthew in 1:18, 18 should really be verse 1. 1 through 17 was added. If you go to an old Bible, there's a little P, like an old italicized P, right at verse 1. That's a pilcrow. That means verses 1 through 17 was added. And the reason that it was added was because Israel was going back into idolatry, producing the narrative that Jesus was half man, half God, as Christianity presents it. That's a false narrative. So when they put verses 1 through 17 in there, they were trying to show the historicity of this particular person. This person really lived. See, if this person really lived, then his foot had to have been over a skull that really lived. See, this is a historical, natural, earthly people who had a particular type of flesh. And if you deny that Christ has come into that flesh, you're an antichrist. You're a bearer of false information. If you go around saying that Jesus was Chinese, is there any text that would prove that? If you go around expressing that he was an alien, or he was Caucasian, he was Irish, is there any facts that will back that up? People saying that Jesus, the Messiah, was of a Caucasian persuasion, just read Acts 18, I think 38, where the Roman centurion saying to Paul, aren't you that Egyptian? Aren't you that person from Mizraim? The dark colored people. This book is a book of people of color. Now, that does not give the people of color any right to brag. But it definitely puts the Gentile on notice, because if they have been treating the descendants of Abraham cruelly, then guess what? According to the book, anyone who blesses you and your children will be blessed. Anyone who curses you and your seeds will be cursed. If you're going around saying that Jesus has taken on a flesh other than the flesh that he took on, he just didn't take on humanity. If he came into this earth, he took on a particular flesh, a melanated flesh, a flesh of color. For Moses, when he put his hand into his bosom and he pulled it out, it was white as snow. If it was white going in, then and it's white coming out, what's the big surprise? When King Solomon and Sheba got together, and from that lineage, Menelik was born, and from that generation, or from that seed, Haile Selassie was born. These people had a direct understanding of who they were related to. A lot of time has gone by. But to understand this book from a Catholic perspective, that's an error. For it says that the man of perdition will change laws and times. The Catholic Church has changed the day of rest from Saturday, the Sabbath, until Sunday. And they have changed the law, saying that the fifth commandment should be on the second tablet. It's 40-60 now. And God doesn't like things out of balance. Commandments 1 through 5 deal with God alone. 6 through 10 deal with man alone. When it says honor your father and mother, it's talking about your heavenly father and your heavenly mother. If God is in heaven, then where would my father? Where would the mother be? Our Father, which art in heaven. If He's your Father, where's His wife? Every man is a man, but not every man is a father. In order for a man to be a father, he has to have had relations with a woman to produce a child. If God is God and He's saying, this is my only begotten Son, who is He having relations with? Isaiah 7:14, seek ye out the book of the Lord, for none shall want her mate. Her mate. Who is she mating with? Who's the author of the book? Oh, the Most High God of Israel? Oh, and that's her mate? But nobody wants her. Nobody wants wisdom. No one wants understanding. This is my Son who I am well pleased. And the Spirit as a dove comes upon that vessel, that body He has prepared for me through Joseph and Mary getting together. Everybody knows that the books have been so-called compromised. Things have been added and taken out. But the truth of the matter is, David fulfills Genesis 3:15 by taking care of the natural. How can you understand the spiritual if you can't understand the natural? When David cut off Goliath's head, he took it to Jerusalem and he buried it. 1,000 years later, Yeshua is born. 33 years later, Freemasonically, Yeshua is crucified. His foot is over the skull of Goliath. What's the name of the hill? Golgotha. Where was Goliath from? Gath. Golgotha. Gilgal. It all revolves around, who do you understand who He is? Who do men say that I am? Are you saying that your understanding of the Messiah, the one who was sent in Genesis 3:15? If God said that He is sending His Son, when Jesus is on the tree and He says it is finished, what is finished is what His Father said in Genesis 3:15. The book is an astro-theological book. If you are following the Christian, Mormon, Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, Presbyterian, any schism of Christianity, you are in error. You're bringing a false narrative to the table. I am the man of Maranatha. I am of Gad. Birthday 3/21. I am the head of the year. I'm setting the boundary. You are about to witness God. You're about to witness His Spirit. These were words to talk about energy. And the energy that is coming, if you are not on its frequency, it's over. It's a wrap. My sheep hear my voice. Genesis 3:15 was Christ crucified. Are you willing to take upon your cross? Are you willing to sell what you have, or are you still stuck on the riches of this world? What is it for a man to gain the world and lose his soul? You need to be working out your salvation with fear and trembling. The Book of Mormon, fine, it deals with the land. But if your mind isn't ready and you go into the land, you're going to get kicked back out. If you're bringing this false narrative, you're going to get kicked back out. You're going to be at the wedding, and this angel's going to come up to you and say, "Hey, your garment isn't right because it look like you got a little bit of Trinity on your chest, or you got a little bit of that virgin birth, that Betula aspect." Isaiah 7:14, the word was Alma, not Betula. Alma just meant a young woman. A Betula was a young woman who never had sex. Now, if a Betula actually got pregnant without having sex, that's a miracle. But God didn't say that in Genesis 3:15. He told the wisest man in this world, who wrote chapter 7, the wisdom of Solomon. He says every king comes into this world in this wise through natural relations with a woman, a man and a woman. Isaiah 7:14, that was for Ahaz, a sign for Ahaz. Isaiah went into his wife, the Alma, but if you read it carefully, she already had children. So an Alma was just a young woman, a virgin. Doesn't have anything to do with if she had sex or not. She was just a young woman. But in Isaiah 7:14, she was the prophetess who already had children, but yet she was called the Alma of 7:14. When Matthew was writing his epistle, when the writers of Matthew were writing, collectively got together and was writing that epistle, they drew from Isaiah 7:14 as the promise. Emmanuel meant God with us as his promise, that his word doesn't come back void. So therefore, they understood Genesis 3:15, the seed of the woman. Each gospel writer places Messiah as the identifying factor when his foot was over the skull. Latin, Calvary is from Latin. It's the language of the sciences. Whoever translated it, they put Calvary, meaning cranium, meaning a literal skull. Now, if you're stuck on the serpent being a reptilian or Anunnaki or, whatever, and producing Goliath, that, because they were the Nephilim, that's not true. But as long as you get an understanding of it being Goliath, as you meditate on it, hopefully the Spirit will chop off the rough edges, like Jesus being the master mason, uh, chipping off the rough edges of Peter, because Peter is stone, and he chops off the rough edges. So you'd be like Cephas. Cephas is like Hebrew or Aramaic for like seaweed, just flowing with the Spirit. Wherever God goes, you go. But it could also be looked upon as Peter's faith was always flipping and flopping. He never could just sit still. I ain't going to deny you. I'm walking on water. Oh, now I'm sinking. When you test the Spirit, where are you exactly? Is your feet on solid ground? Do you understand Goliath? Because if you understand how David fulfilled the natural, then you can understand how this book, the spiritual aspect of this book. This is Helios Biblios. It's a book of the sun. The Bible is an anthropomorphic story of the positions of the sun. The moon and the sun and the moon were giving to Israel as signs. What we should be ready and preparing ourselves to witness is something that you've never seen before. But a lot of people who are not looking and are not prepared, they're going to miss the opportunity to see God. Not the God, but the Son of God. What's coming back? Because see, no man has seen God and lived, but what's coming back? We're going to be able to look at the Son. And by us looking at the Son of God, hopefully we'll be able to reflect his light. Because when we see the Son, we see God. He is an artifact of his brilliance and of his glory. All of your things that you've done, all of your works are going to be tested by the fire. See, when Christ was crucified, what went out? The sun. See, the last time the sun went dark, that was a reset. That's when they changed the years, the time. It's about to happen again. And if you do not warn the people of this truth, of this spirit, the blood is upon me. But I'm trying to articulate it as best as I can. Was the story historical? Yes. But as above, so below, as on earth, as in heaven, When Christ was crucified, he was fulfilling Genesis 3:15 because his physical foot was over a physical skull. This is the natural order of things. You can't mix the two. When you mix the two, you produce a Nephilim. You produce an idol. You produce an understanding that is not biblical. The biblical narrative is that this is a historic book dealing with the historic people who had a particular type of flesh. And the other nations always, they dealt wisely with this nation. But now it is time to pay the piper. You will reap what you sow. Now, when the reset happens, you have to understand the true Israelites, the true chosen ones are going to be left behind. Some will be taken and the others are going to be left behind because they are supposed to teach all nations. This is Back to the Future. This is Monday Night Quarterbacking. Everything that you've read, it's about to happen to you. Are you a soldier for the Lord? Or will you be like Jonah and say, I don't want to go to my job. I don't want to go to America. I don't want to tell them this truth. Then you're like Peter. You're denying this gospel. There is a rapture happening. But those who are left behind, those are the ones that you're going to be tested through trials and tribulation, and you count it all joy because God is really working out a refinement in you, in your faith. Will you jump down into the pit knowing that the Son of God will be there protecting you from the fire? Or will you give in for 30 shekels of silver? The feminine of Christ. Christ is coming back for his ecclesia, not the church. Christ is coming back for his bride, the feminine. God has a wife and he made man in his image. Adam, like the father, he has a wife, Eve. God's name is I am that I am. His wife name just took on the last name, I am. Christ is the second Adam according to Paul, and out of his side when he's on the cross, on the stake, blood and water comes out. That is the birth of his ecclesia, his bride, the feminine. Lucifer, masculine, he has a feminine, the whore, Mystery Babylon. Are you within Mystery Babylon? What narrative are you producing of this text? Is it the truth or is it your interpretation? There are over 80,000 different denominations preaching a different gospel. But what is the true gospel of this book? What is the true interpretation, the true understanding? Just because you're reading the Book of Mormon, Mormon is dealing with the land. That's fine. It's an extra historical book of the Israelite story. But as far as Helios Biblios, the Sun Book, if you're not understanding this book and understanding that Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights, December 25th, that was the conception of the Messiah. And then 9 months later, he tabernacled with us. Everything lines up when you understand the sun. Everybody is doing sun worship except for Israel. They know that all of the gas stations and all of the logos, everything is dealing with the sun. We don't worship the sun. We worship the one that created the sun. The one that created the sun said, look at the sun and the moon as signs. Are you prepared? Are you ready? I am the man, the Marionette of Detroit, Michigan.